Have you ever seen someone's entire reputation crumble in just one night? What if I told you that a woman was about to make a scene so outrageous at her best? Friend's birthday party that it left everyone speechless? This isn't just another Karen moment. What happens after this meltdown will shock you to the core. The evening began like any other celebration. Balloons floated against the ceiling. Music pulsed through the living room, and the chatter of guests blended with the smell of freshly baked cake. Karen arrived fashionably late, clutching a glittery handbag and wearing a smug smile, as though the night revolved entirely around her. Her best friend, Lydia, greeted her with a warm hug. Lydia had known Karen for over 2 decades. Through failed relationships, job switches, and countless drama-filled episodes. Tonight, Lydia hoped Karen would simply relax and enjoy the festivities. But Karen wasn't one to blend into the background. Within minutes, she took over the living room conversation. She criticized the DJ's song choices, complained about the cheap wine, and rolled her eyes at anyone who dared challenge her opinions. Guests exchanged awkward glances, whispering under their breath. But no one wanted to ignite her temper. The tension peaked when Lydia unveiled her birthday cake. Guests gathered to sing, laughter filling the room, until Karen interrupted. "That's it? A supermarket cake? Lydia, you deserve better than this store-bought nonsense." The room fell silent. Lydia's smile faded as embarrassment washed over her face. Karen's words cut deeper than she realized. Friends began shifting uncomfortably, some even retreating toward the kitchen. "Karen, that's enough," Lydia finally said, her voice steady but firm. She had reached her breaking point. "This is my party, not yours. If you can't be kind, then maybe you should leave." Karen froze, stunned. She had expected Lydia to laugh it off, not challenge her. Anger flared in her chest, and her face turned red. "Leave? You're kicking me out? After everything I've done for you?" Lydia didn't flinch. She gestured toward the door. "Yes, leave." Gasps rippled through the guests. Nobody had ever dared stand up to Karen like this before. For a moment, it looked like she might storm out in silence. But then Karen exploded. Her voice thundered through the house. Accusations flying, betrayal, ingratitude, insults hurled like daggers. The party that was meant to celebrate friendship and joy had turned into a battlefield, with Karen at the center of chaos. And as she slammed the door behind her, one question lingered in everyone's mind. What would Karen do next? Karen drove away from Lydia's house with her knuckles white on the steering wheel, fury pulsing through her veins. Streetlights blurred past as her mind replayed the humiliation over and over. "How dare she embarrass me? In front of everyone!" Karen muttered under her breath. At home, she poured herself a glass of wine and paced the living room. Her bob cut framed a face twisted with rage. She couldn't shake the image of Lydia's stern face, the guests' judgmental stares, the whispers that followed her exit. To Karen, this wasn't just about a party. It was betrayal. The next morning, the group chat among Lydia's friends exploded with messages. Screenshots flew back and forth, retelling the drama, each version painting Karen as the villain. "Did you hear what she said about the cake?" One text read, "Lydia was right to kick her out." Another agreed. Karen saw every message. She had been silently watching from the shadows of her phone, heart pounding with each notification. Her anger sharpened into something darker. Vengeance. She began typing, her fingers hitting the screen with force. "You all think I'm the bad guy? Fine, but you don't know Lydia like I do. She's not who you think she is. I have proof." The message was enough to stir the group into chaos. Some demanded to know what she meant. Others begged her to stop. Karen didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out a dusty shoebox from under her bed. Inside were old photographs, letters, and mementos of her long friendship with Lydia. Buried among them were secrets. Secrets Lydia had shared in confidence over the years. Karen's lips curled into a smile. "If Lydia wants to turn everyone against me, then I'll show them the real Lydia." By afternoon, Karen had crafted a long, venomous Facebook post. It wasn't just about the cake incident anymore. She accused Lydia of being a terrible friend, of using people, of hiding shameful truths from her circle. The post was laced with just enough real details to sound believable, but twisted to make Lydia look like a manipulative monster. Within hours, dozens of people had read it. Some expressed shock, others defended Lydia. The post became the talk of the town. Lydia, meanwhile, sat in her living room, devastated as her phone buzzed nonstop with calls and messages. Her birthday, the night that was supposed to be filled with joy, had turned into a nightmare. Karen leaned back in her chair, satisfied. She thought she had won. But what she didn't realize was that this was only the beginning, because Lydia wasn't going to stay silent. Lydia sat on the edge of her couch, clutching her phone as if it might explode in her hands. Every few seconds, another notification lit up her screen. Friends forwarding Karen's vicious post, some asking if it was true, others warning her to respond quickly before the gossip spread further. For hours, she stared at the hateful words Karen had written, lies twisted with half-truths, private confessions ripped out of context. It was cruel, calculated, and deeply personal. Lydia felt like her trust had been weaponized. Tears stung her eyes, but beneath the heartbreak, something else stirred, resolve. Enough was enough. Lydia had tolerated Karen's antics for years. The passive-aggressive comments, the public outbursts, the way Karen always managed to turn every occasion into a stage for herself. Lydia had excused it as just Karen being Karen. But now, Karen had crossed a line that could never be undone. She opened the group chat and typed, "Everyone deserves to know the truth. I've stayed quiet for too long. If Karen wants a war, she's got one." Her fingers trembled as she pressed send. One by one, the dots appeared as her friends typed back. They encouraged her, urging her not to let Karen control the narrative. With their support behind her, Lydia decided to speak publicly. That evening, Lydia went live on Facebook. She appeared calm but determined, her voice steady as she addressed the growing drama. "Many of you have seen the post written about me," she began. "I want to make something very clear. Karen's words are not the truth. They are distortions, meant to hurt me because I stood up to her when she ruined my birthday celebration." Then she told her side of the story, how Karen had insulted the cake, disrupted the party, and lashed out when asked to leave. She reminded people of all the times Karen had humiliated others, made scenes at restaurants, or belittled friends. Lydia didn't need to embellish. The stories spoke for themselves. Comments poured in as she spoke. Messages of support flooded the live chat. "We've seen Karen do this before. Good for you, Lydia, for standing up for yourself. Karen needs help, not attention." Meanwhile, Karen sat at home watching the live stream unfold. At first, she scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. But as the viewer count climbed higher and higher, as the flood of supportive comments rolled in for Lydia, Karen's smirk faded. Her chest tightened. The tide of public opinion was shifting, and fast. By the time Lydia ended her broadcast, Karen's phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages from mutual friends poured in, not with sympathy, but with anger. "Why would you say those things about Lydia? You've gone too far this time, Karen." For the first time in years, Karen wasn't in control of the story, and that terrified her. But Karen wasn't about to admit defeat. If Lydia wanted a war, Karen was prepared to take it to the next level, no matter the cost. Karen's house felt eerily quiet that night, the silence broken only by the occasional buzz of her phone. Each notification brought more bad news, friends unfriending her, distant relatives scolding her, even acquaintances telling her she had gone too far. She sat in the dim glow of her living room lamp, scrolling through Lydia's live video again and again. The words burned her ears. "Karen ruined my birthday. Karen humiliated me in front of everyone. Karen has done this for years." Karen's bob cut framed a face hardened with rage. "They're all turning against me," she whispered to herself. "Because of her." In her mind, Lydia hadn't just embarrassed her. She had stolen her identity. For decades, Karen had been the center of attention in their circle. People feared her temper, respected her opinions, and gave her the spotlight. But now, she was being painted as the villain, and Lydia was suddenly the hero. Her desperation grew. She opened her laptop and began typing furiously. First, she crafted long, ranting emails to old friends, begging them to see the truth. When that didn't get the response she wanted, she escalated. Karen began calling people in the middle of the night, leaving voicemails filled with anger, tears, and accusations. But the more she fought, the more people pulled away. By morning, she felt cornered, alone, and in her loneliness. A dangerous idea took root. If Lydia wanted to make her look bad, then Karen would show the world just how bad things could get. That afternoon, Lydia stepped outside her house to find her car covered in sticky notes, hundreds of them, each with a single word scrawled in angry handwriting. Liar, betrayer, fraud. Her mailbox was stuffed with printouts of Karen's original Facebook rant. Neighbors gathered, whispering, as Lydia tore the notes from her car. Her hands shook, not just from anger, but from fear. Karen had crossed from online drama into real-world harassment. Lydia called the police. When officers arrived, they listened carefully as she explained the situation. They warned her that Karen's behavior could escalate further and advised her to document everything. That evening, Lydia received a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but you haven't. I know things about you that would destroy your life. Don't test me." Lydia's blood ran cold. She recognized the style of the message immediately. It was Karen. But what Karen didn't know was that Lydia had already started protecting herself. She had saved every message, every voicemail, every screenshot. If Karen wanted a war, Lydia was preparing her final move. And when it came, it wouldn't just silence Karen, it would change everything. The next morning, Lydia woke up with a heaviness in her chest. Her phone glowed with more messages, friends reaching out, strangers commenting on the drama, and Karen's threats lurking like storm clouds in the background. She knew things couldn't go on like this. It was time to end it, once and for all. She gathered everything, screenshots of Karen's hateful posts, recordings of the late-night voicemails, photos of the sticky note attack, and the threatening text. With shaking hands, she placed it all in a folder labeled Evidence. Then she made a call. Not to Karen, not to friends, but to a lawyer. By that afternoon, Lydia had filed a harassment complaint. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection. For the first time, Karen's actions would face real consequences. Meanwhile, Karen sat in her house, oblivious to what was coming. She was too busy plotting her next move. Her eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, her hair disheveled, her once perfect bob cut now hanging unevenly as she muttered to herself, "If she wants a war, I'll give her one. They'll all regret turning on me." Her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. She answered sharply, "Who is this?" "Karen Thompson?" a calm voice asked. "This is Officer Delgado. We need to speak with you about a complaint that's been filed." Karen's blood froze. Later that evening, as news spread quietly among the community, people began to realize the story had flipped yet again. Lydia wasn't just defending herself, she was standing up against years of manipulation. Karen's reign of intimidation had finally hit a wall. But the real shock came a week later. At a small cafe downtown, Lydia sat with a few close friends, sipping tea and finally smiling again. A man approached her table, holding out a folded piece of paper. "You don't know me," he said nervously, "but I used to be friends with Karen too. I saw what you went through, and I think people deserve to know the whole truth about her." Inside the paper was a collection of testimonies, stories from others who had been hurt by Karen over the years. Old friends, former co-workers, even neighbors who had stayed silent out of fear. They all described the same pattern: manipulation, public scenes, cruel words, and broken trust. Lydia's eyes widened as she realized she wasn't alone. For years, Karen had thrived on intimidation. But now, the truth was spilling out. One by one, people were finding their voices. Karen, once the loudest person in any room, now found herself surrounded by silence. No one was listening anymore. No one was afraid. And as the sun set that evening, Lydia finally felt free. The war was over, Not because Karen gave up, but because everyone stopped giving her power. The shocking truth? Karen didn't just lose a friend that night. She lost everything she had built her identity on. And it was her own explosion that brought it all crashing down.